When you hear the word chosen, it sounds like honor. It suggests special favor, elevation, and access that others may not have. And while that may be true, the story is never that simple. Being chosen by God doesn't always look like being celebrated. Sometimes it looks like being isolated. Sometimes it feels like being hidden, stretched, misunderstood, and painfully processed behind the scenes. To be chosen is not just to be favored, it is to be trusted with weight that others may never carry. Before we continue, please subscribe and be part of our ministry. Most people admire the chosen from a distance. They see the gift, but not the grief. They witness the promotion, but not the pain. They assume everything flows easily because of divine selection. But what they do not see is the crushing that often precedes the calling. The chosen fight silent battles. They endure delays that make no sense. They walk through seasons where God seems quiet but still expects obedience. It is not punishment. It is preparation. And those who are truly chosen must first be broken before they are released. This is why the chosen struggle, not because God has forgotten them, but because He has marked them. When heaven sets you apart, it must also strip you of everything that would compromise the assignment. The struggle is sacred. The pressure is proof. And if your journey feels heavier than most, it may be because your purpose is weightier than most. Now, let's look deeper into why this road is so often difficult for the chosen. 7 reasons the chosen struggle. 1. Because their process comes before their platform. Many people desire to be used mightily by God. They long for the stage, the microphone, the influence, the impact. But what they do not always understand is that with every divine platform comes a private process. God never places a person where their character cannot stand. Before He gives you the weight of responsibility, He prepares you through the pressure of refinement. For the chosen, this process is not optional. It is necessary, and that is why the struggle often begins long before the breakthrough is visible. God will never elevate someone He cannot trust. Being chosen means you are not just called to receive blessings, you are called to carry something holy, and holiness must be refined. The crushing seasons, the waiting seasons, and the confusing seasons are not delays in purpose. They are the very tools God uses to build depth in the chosen. There are treasures God deposits in the dark that will carry you when the light finds you. The struggle is not meant to break you, it is meant to reveal you. Look at Joseph. Before he stood in Pharaoh's palace, he was thrown into a pit by his brothers. He was sold into slavery. He was falsely accused and placed in prison. Years passed before anyone called his name. But in that hidden place, God was shaping his heart, teaching him wisdom, humbling his spirit, and preparing him for leadership. The dream was given in youth, but the fulfillment required maturity. Psalm chapter 105 verse 19 says, "Till what he foretold came to pass, till the word of the Lord proved him true." His pain was not wasted. It was the soil that produced his readiness. Or consider David. He was anointed as a young man, then sent back to tend sheep in the wilderness. Long before he held a crown, he held a harp in solitude. He learned to worship without applause and to fight battles when no one was watching. His greatest victories were not always in front of armies, but in caves and silent places. God developed him slowly because the weight of the crown required a depth that could not be rushed. Even Jesus, the Son of God, embraced the process. He was hidden for 30 years before he stepped into his public ministry. He waited, he grew, he submitted. And when the time came, he walked in power without arrogance and in authority without pride. Hebrews chapter 5 verse 8 says, "Son though he was, he learned obedience from what he suffered." If the Son of God did not skip process, how much more must the chosen submit to it? The process is sacred. It is not a punishment. It is a divine classroom. In the hidden struggle, God teaches you how to depend on Him fully, how to pray when no one sees, and how to obey when there is no affirmation. These quiet lessons become the foundation that sustains you when the doors finally open. The higher the calling, the deeper the roots must grow. Shallow preparation leads to shaky platforms. But when your character is forged in fire, your assignment will not consume you. If your life has felt like a long string of delays, closed doors, or repeated lessons, do not let frustration blind you to the truth. God is not punishing you. He is building something eternal in you. He is removing what will not endure and instilling what will. He is teaching you to serve before you lead. He is anchoring your identity in Him before giving you influence. And most of all, He is drawing you closer, not pushing you away. This is why the chosen struggle, because their process must come before their platform. And when the day arrives, they will not step into it empty. They will arrive with scars that have turned into wisdom, with oil pressed from pain, and with a voice that carries the weight of truth. What they speak will not be performance. It will be power, because it was born in the secret place. And because they endured the process, they will be able to carry the promise. Let us now explore the second point. 2. Because they are set apart, not just set ahead. One of the most misunderstood experiences of the chosen is isolation. Not because people dislike them, but because God has deliberately set them apart. When you are chosen, your journey will not look like everyone else's. You will not always be able to follow the crowd. The same doors that open easily for others may remain closed to you. The same circles that accept others may feel foreign or even hostile to you. This is not rejection. It is separation, and it is holy. God does not just call the chosen to rise, He calls them to come away. Before He elevates you, He sanctifies you. To be sanctified means to be set apart for holy use. And anything that is set apart must be handled differently. You cannot expect to be treated like the masses when heaven has placed a unique mark on your life. There is a weight to your calling that requires a level of consecration that many are not willing to carry. This separation can be lonely. It can be confusing. It can feel like you are being punished when you are actually being protected. Sometimes you will see others doing what your spirit cannot tolerate. You will try to engage in the same activities, conversations, or habits, but something in you will feel grieved. That is not legalism. That is the Spirit of God calling you deeper. You are not missing out. You are being kept. Consider Moses. Raised in Pharaoh's palace, he had access to everything Egypt offered. But God called him away from the palace to the backside of the wilderness. He was set apart for an assignment that would shake nations. That setting apart came with silence, solitude, and a stripping away of all his earthly status. But in that desert, Moses encountered the burning bush. He heard God's voice with clarity. He saw the glory of God in a way no one else in his generation did. That kind of revelation does not come in the crowd. It comes in the consecrated place. Or think of John the Baptist. While others were growing up in towns and villages, John was in the wilderness until the day of his revealing. No crowd, no spotlight, no applause, just preparation. He was different. His appearance, his voice, his message, none of it conformed. But he was the forerunner of Christ. He was chosen to prepare the way. And because of that, God prepared him in secret. When you are set apart, it means your growth may look delayed, but it is being deeply rooted. Your schedule may feel empty, but it is being purified. Your relationships may feel limited, but they are being filtered. You are not being left behind. You are being hidden on purpose. God hides what He values. He does not place treasure in the open. He conceals it until the appointed time. And if you feel hidden, It may be because God is still building what no eye has yet seen. This separation will stretch your emotions. It will challenge your desires. It will test your obedience. But it will also protect the anointing. Some people lose their oil by stepping into rooms before they are ready. Some connections contaminate what God is doing in your life. And so, in His mercy, God separates you. He says, "Not now, not yet, not them." And every time you obey, your spirit grows stronger even when your heart aches. To be set apart is to live with a sense of divine restraint. You may not be able to explain it to others. You just know you are not like them. What satisfies them does not satisfy you. What excites them does not excite you. What they can play with, you must flee from. That is not a curse. That is a calling. And the more you embrace it, the more heaven begins to trust you with secrets, instructions, and authority that only the consecrated can carry. This is why the chosen struggle, because they are set apart, not just set ahead. Their path is narrow, their cost is high. But the glory that rests on their life is not common. It is the reward of the hidden place. And yet, there is another reason the chosen struggle. Not only are they set apart, but they are often the first in their bloodline to be given the burden to break what others survived. Let us now examine another reason. 3. Because they are called to break generational cycles. There is a special kind of weight that rests on the shoulders of those chosen to break patterns that have existed for generations. It is not the kind of calling that comes with celebration. It is the kind that comes with warfare. To be chosen often means you are the first in your family to walk differently, believe differently, pray differently, and live differently. You are not just fighting for your future. You are standing in the gap for those who came before you and those who will come after you. And that kind of assignment comes with unusual pressure. The chosen are often raised in environments that contradict their calling. They grow up witnessing cycles of poverty, fear, abuse, addiction, or spiritual ignorance. And yet, in the middle of that environment, God plants a seed of resistance, a hunger, a refusal to settle. There is a voice in them that says it does not have to continue like this. That voice is the evidence that heaven has placed a breaker anointing upon their life. But knowing something must change is only the beginning. The battle comes in the process of actually changing it. When you are called to break generational cycles, you will face resistance not just from the outside world, but from within your bloodline. The patterns that shaped your family did not arrive overnight. They were built over decades, even centuries, through trauma, choices, agreements, and silence. And when you rise to confront them, you are not just fighting flesh. You are confronting strongholds. You are disturbing principalities that have grown comfortable in your family line. The enemy does not give up territory without a fight, so you feel it. The tension, the warfare, the isolation, the attacks that seem unreasonable until you realize they are generational. You may wonder why you feel misunderstood by relatives or distant from the people you love. It is because your hunger for God exposes the complacency others have learned to live with. Your pursuit of truth challenges the excuses others have accepted. You are not trying to be better than anyone. You are trying to walk in the freedom Christ died to give. But that very desire can make you a target. Not because you are wrong, but because you are different. Abraham was called to leave his father's house and follow God into a land he had never seen. That was not just a relocation. It was a break from everything familiar, everything cultural, everything generational. He had to step into something new without a blueprint. He had to trust a God his fathers had not known, and because of his obedience, he became the father of nations. That is the cost and the reward of a cycle breaker. When you are called to break patterns, your process will feel longer. You are not just being prepared for personal victory. You are laying the foundation for an entirely new lineage. Your prayers are unlocking doors for children not yet born. Your tears are washing away the residue that has sat dormant for years. Your worship is dismantling altars that your ancestors unknowingly built. This is spiritual work, and it is costly, but it is holy. There will be moments when you want to give up, when you wonder if it is even worth it. But you must remember that your obedience is rewriting the story of your bloodline. Heaven is watching, hell is resisting, but God is strengthening you in the hidden place. Every time you choose to forgive, to pray, to walk away from compromise, to speak life instead of death, you are breaking bricks in a wall that once stood unshaken. This is why the chosen struggle, because they are called to break what others endured. They are not being punished. They are being trusted. God sees in them the courage to confront what generations feared. And through them, freedom will no longer be a distant hope. It will become a living reality. But the weight of this calling does not stop with breaking cycles. There is another dimension of the chosen life that adds to the struggle. It is the weight of a spiritual burden. Let us now explore the fourth reason. 4. Because they carry a prophetic burden. When someone is truly chosen, they do not walk through life lightly. There is a weight on their spirit that others may never perceive. It is the weight of a prophetic burden. This burden is not about dramatic predictions. It is about feeling what God feels. It is about carrying insight that presses on the heart like fire shut up in the bones. You sense things before they unfold. You weep over names you have never spoken to. You wake in the night stirred by something you cannot articulate. Being chosen is to live with one ear to heaven and one heart broken for the earth. This kind of sensitivity is not always understood. Those around you might call you too emotional, too intense, too much. But the weight is not a performance. It is not pretense. It is sensitivity. And you did not ask for it. You carry it because God trusts you to feel what others will not. You can walk into a room and feel the spiritual climate before anyone opens their mouth. You see through smiles. You hear what has not been said. It is not imagination. It is divine awareness. And with that awareness comes responsibility. Jeremiah felt this weight. He was known as the weeping prophet, not because he lacked hope, but because he carried the tears of heaven. He groaned with what the people would not repent for. He ached over their blindness. Prophetic people feel grief others ignore. They are not just listeners, they are carriers. When God shares his burden, it comes in the form of intercession, groanings, restlessness, and often loneliness, because what they feel cannot always be explained. Romans chapter 8 verse 26 says, "The Spirit himself intercedes for us through wordless groans." Those groans are real, and they often come from the chosen. This burden does not arrive at convenient times. While others are feasting, the chosen may be fasting. While others are asleep, they are awake in prayer. It is not because they are superhuman, it is because they cannot shake the pull. It is not sorrow without end, but it is awareness without escape. There is a deep joy in communion with God, and yet that joy walks hand in hand with tears. You may smile and still feel a cry in your spirit. You may celebrate and still sense a warning. This is what happens when you walk closely with the God who sees all. And that is why rest is sacred for the chosen. Prophetic burden is not meant to be carried endlessly without relief. It must be returned to God. You must learn to pour it out at his feet so it does not wear you thin. Matthew chapter 11 verse 28 reminds us, "Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest." The burden is not the problem. Isolation is. God calls you to feel, but not to carry it alone. He gives you his heart so you can return it in intercession, not so it consumes you. There is a particular pain in carrying a word that no one is ready for. When you hear urgency and they hear noise. When you see danger and they see peace. When you call out and they ignore. But you cannot stop speaking because the reception is cold. Your obedience is not tethered to applause. It is anchored in the voice of God. The chosen do not prophesy for popularity. They speak because they must. They speak because silence would be disobedience. This is why the chosen struggle, because they carry what costs them comfort, sleep, clarity, and sometimes relationships. They are not called to impress. They are called to intercede, to feel what God feels in a world that often feels nothing, to warn even when it offends, to stand in the gap when everyone else is distracted. Their tears are not weakness, they are warfare. Their burden is not strange, it is sacred, and it marks them as those who heaven can trust. But even this burden is not the full picture. There is another layer to the calling that adds even greater weight. The chosen do not just carry revelation, they carry wounds. They often walk through suffering that shapes the mercy in their message. Let us now look at why the chosen must endure pain, so their voices carry not just truth, but tenderness. 5. Because their pain produces compassion for others. There is a kind of pain that transforms a person. Not just the kind that wounds, but the kind that awakens something deeper. When the chosen walk through suffering, it is rarely wasted. God uses their pain as a tool to shape their heart. He allows them to walk through what they will one day speak to. Before they become voices of healing, they often become students of affliction, not to crush them, but to break the hardness that might have grown around their hearts. This is how compassion is born. God does not allow his chosen to walk through pain without purpose. When they suffer, something sacred is being developed. As Romans chapter 5 verses 3-4 says, "Not only so, but we also glory in our sufferings, because we know that suffering produces perseverance, perseverance, character, and character, hope." The chosen are not allowed to stand on platforms detached from the realities of human struggle. They must understand loss. They must feel grief. They must experience betrayal, rejection, fear, or failure in some form. Not to punish them, but so they will never look at another hurting soul with judgment. Their pain becomes the seed of empathy. They can sit with people in their darkness without minimizing it. They are able to offer hope without sounding detached, because they know they have been there. Paul spoke about this in his second letter to the Corinthians. In 2 Corinthians chapter 1 verses 3-4, he writes, "Praise be to the God and Father of our Lord Jesus Christ, the Father of compassion and the God of all comfort, who comforts us in all our troubles, so that we can comfort those in any trouble with the comfort we ourselves receive from God." That is not theory. That is experience. You cannot truly comfort someone with words alone. You comfort with presence, with understanding, with the kind of insight that only comes from having walked through the fire and made it out alive. When the chosen speak healing, it is not hollow. It carries weight because it was born in their night seasons. This is why you may have walked through things that seemed unfair. Why your heart was broken when all you wanted to do was love. Why your name was slandered when your intentions were pure. Why doors closed without warning. It was not always about you. It was about who you would one day reach. God was allowing you to taste what others endure so you would never forget what it feels like. So your voice would carry mercy, not pride. So your hands would reach out instead of pointing fingers. So your eyes would see pain in places others overlook. There is something about pain that humbles the soul. It softens you. It quiets the need to perform and teaches you how to simply be. The chosen often walk through hidden pain because public platforms without private depth lead to shallow ministry. But when you have suffered deeply, you do not speak carelessly. You do not dismiss someone's story. You honor it. You listen longer. You carry them in prayer, not just in conversation. And when you speak, your words are covered in the oil of compassion. Jesus is our greatest example. He did not just come to save from a distance. He walked among us. Hebrews chapter 4, verse 15 declares, "For we do not have a high priest who is unable to empathize with our weaknesses, but we have one who has been tempted in every way, just as we are, yet he did not sin." He wept. He bled. He felt hunger and betrayal. He endured silence and suffering. And because of that, he is able to meet us in our lowest places. That is the model. That is why the chosen must also feel. So their ministry is not detached, but drenched in mercy. If you are chosen, do not despise your pain. Do not rush to escape it. As James chapter 1 verses 2-4 says, "Consider it pure joy, my brothers and sisters, whenever you face trials of many kinds, because you know that the testing of your faith produces perseverance. Let perseverance finish its work, so that you may be mature and complete, not lacking anything." Let it do its work. Let it deepen your love. Let it crush any self-righteousness. Let it train your eyes to see the broken differently, because the very tears you cry today may become the language of healing for someone tomorrow. Your scars will speak louder than sermons, and your story will carry the fragrance of someone who knows God not just in theory, but in the furnace. This is why the chosen struggle, because their pain produces a compassion that cannot be manufactured. It is real, it is raw, and it is needed. But there is more. For the chosen must also learn to recognize the voice of God in ways others cannot. Let us now move on to the next reason. They must be trained to hear God. 6. Because they must be trained to hear God clearly. For the chosen, clarity of God's voice is not a luxury, it is a necessity. Their assignment demands obedience, and obedience is impossible without discernment. That is why the chosen often find themselves in seasons that sharpen their hearing. God trains them to recognize His voice, not just in moments of peace, but in the middle of noise, confusion, and spiritual warfare. It is not always about hearing an audible word. It is about sensitivity, the ability to know when to move, when to wait, when to speak, and when to remain silent. That kind of discernment is not developed overnight. It is forged in silence. Many times, the chosen struggle because God pulls them away from constant noise. While others can thrive in distraction, they are called into seasons of quiet. Conversations feel draining. Environments that once felt comfortable suddenly feel heavy. Even familiar routines begin to lose their appeal. It is not depression. It is divine recalibration. God is tuning their spirit like an instrument, removing static, breaking attachments, and heightening awareness. This is how prophets are formed. This is how deliverers are raised, not in crowds, but in consecrated stillness. Consider the story of Elijah. After calling down fire from heaven and confronting false prophets, he ran in fear and exhaustion. God found him in a cave, but when he spoke, it was not through the wind, the earthquake, or the fire. It was in a still, small voice. Elijah had to quiet his emotions, still his fears, and lean into the whisper. That is what the chosen must learn. Not every word from God will come with thunder. Sometimes it is a soft nudge, a holy silence, a sense in your spirit that cannot be explained but cannot be ignored. This kind of training is not always comfortable. There will be times when God seems quiet. When you fast and pray, and still hear nothing, when you obey and still face resistance. These are the moments that teach you faith beyond feeling. The chosen must learn to obey God's last instruction even when no new one comes. They must learn to trust the character of God even when his voice feels distant. That kind of trust is what separates those who merely believe from those who are truly sent. Hearing God also means recognizing his voice above your own. The chosen must confront their desires, fears, and assumptions. Sometimes what you want will sound like God if you are not still enough. The heart can be loud, the mind can be busy. That is why God allows wilderness seasons, not to punish, but to purge. In the wilderness, the only voice that satisfies is the one that gives life. All other voices fade. You learn to distinguish the shepherd's voice from the stranger's. This clarity becomes crucial because the chosen are often called to walk paths no one else understands. They must step out when others are sitting still. They must make decisions that defy logic. They must say yes to assignments that have no blueprint. Without a trained ear, fear would paralyze them. But when they know they have heard God, they can endure mockery, delays, and even isolation with confidence. Because they are not moving by opinion, they are moving by instruction. This is why God sometimes delays answers, not to frustrate, but to refine. He is teaching his chosen how to wait, how to press in, how to seek him with a pure heart. The delay is not a denial. It is an invitation to go deeper, to lean in, to strip away the noise and sit with the word until revelation comes. That level of pursuit builds spiritual muscles. It creates unshakable faith. This is why the chosen struggle, because they must be trained to hear God clearly, not just for themselves, but for others. Their decisions affect families, churches, and even nations. That kind of influence requires precision, and precision requires process. But the struggle is not only about training or burden. There is also warfare attached to the calling. Let us now explore why the enemy fights the chosen so early. It is not about their present, it is about their future. Let us move into the final reason. The enemy fears what they will become. 7. Because the enemy fears what they will become. From the moment you are chosen, the enemy begins his campaign to stop you. Not because of where you are now, but because of what you will become. Hell does not waste resources on people with no spiritual threat. The intensity of your warfare is often a reflection of your destiny. The enemy sees the mark on your life. He sees the oil forming even before you do, and he fears what will happen when you come into the full knowledge of who you are. That is why the attacks feel personal. That is why they start early. Many of the chosen faced unusual hardship in childhood. They were targeted with rejection, abuse, trauma, confusion, or abandonment. Not by coincidence, but by design. The enemy tries to plant lies as early as possible. If he can convince you that you are unloved, unworthy, forgotten, or broken, he can slow your alignment with God's truth. He fears the day you awaken, the day you discover that your scars are not shameful, but sacred, that your wounds were not wasted, but weaponized for purpose. The enemy's strategy is not just to delay you. It is to distract and discourage you before you ever begin. That is why the chosen often struggle with insecurity, comparison, fear of failure, and deep internal battles. These are not just emotional issues. They are spiritual attacks against your identity. If Satan can keep you questioning who you are, you will never rise into what you carry. He fears your voice. He fears your influence. He fears the deliverance that will come through your obedience. Jesus experienced this pattern early. Before he ever performed a miracle, the enemy met him in the wilderness. The attack was not random, it was strategic. If you are the Son of God, the enemy said. It was an identity assault, because if Jesus questioned who he was, he would never walk fully in his assignment. But Jesus responded with the word. He overcame not just for himself, but for every chosen one who would face the same spiritual test. He showed us that knowing your identity is the greatest weapon against the enemy's lies. This is why you may feel resistance in places that others move through easily, why you battle to stay consistent in prayer, why distractions rise just as you prepare to go deeper. The enemy throws everything he can to make you believe the fight is not worth it. But he knows what is coming. He knows what happens when you surrender completely. He knows that once you stop entertaining fear and step into alignment, heaven will back your every word. The struggle is not random. It is targeted. You are not weak. You are dangerous. The enemy wants you to think you are forgotten, but in truth, you are feared. He wants to exhaust you before you become effective. He wants to isolate you so he can whisper lies without interruption. But the truth is stronger, and every attack is confirmation. Confirmation that there is something in you that threatens darkness, that there is a light in you the enemy could not extinguish. When you realize this, the struggle begins to make sense. It is not just about what has happened to you. It is about what heaven has assigned to flow through you. You are not being punished. You are being refined for impact. The pressure, the pain, the opposition, it is not evidence of abandonment. It is evidence of assignment. And the enemy's resistance is often the loudest just before the greatest breakthrough. This is why the chosen struggle, because the enemy sees what you are still growing into, and he fears it. But what he fears cannot be stopped. What God has ordained cannot be erased. You were chosen, you were marked, and even in the fire, you are being formed for glory. Now that we have uncovered the 7 reasons the chosen struggle, let us shift into the next section of this journey. We will now explore the signs that you have been chosen. Because if this message has stirred something in your spirit, it is time to recognize the evidence. Let us look at what reveals that God has set you apart. The first sign we will look at is that you carry an unexplainable grace that sets you apart. Some people walk into a room and shift the atmosphere without saying a word. They are not necessarily loud, well-dressed, or even trying to be noticed, but something about their presence draws attention. That is often the case for those whom God has chosen. There is a supernatural grace that rests on them, and it cannot be mimicked or manufactured. It follows them into places they do not belong on paper. It opens doors they never applied for. It connects them to people they could not have orchestrated on their own. This is not talent. It is not charisma. It is divine selection. This kind of grace makes people ask questions. Why did you get the job when you were the least qualified? Why do people come to you for advice when you have no formal title? Why do you survive storms that destroy others? Why do you keep rising after every fall? Grace. That is the answer. It is not about being better. It is about being chosen. And when God chooses someone, he wraps them in favor for the sake of his purpose. You may not always feel qualified. In fact, the chosen often feel overwhelmed by what rests on them. But God does not call the qualified. He qualifies the called. The grace that sets you apart is not about your ability. It is about your availability. When your heart is surrendered, heaven places weight on your life that even you cannot fully explain. And this weight becomes your covering. It draws help when you are weak. It speaks on your behalf when you are silent. It clears paths that were once blocked. Grace does not always remove the struggle, but it makes you untouchable in the midst of it. This grace also protects you. There are things that should have consumed you, but they did not. There are situations that should have marked you for life, but somehow you came out healed. People tried to sabotage you, and it still worked in your favor. Not because you fought harder, but because grace was covering you. The chosen walk through fire and come out without the smell of smoke. They walk through betrayal and still carry love. They endure delay and still give God praise, because grace holds them steady even when their emotions shake. You will notice that this grace shows up in strategic moments. At times when others give up, something in you keeps going. When others are celebrating comfort, something in you longs for more. When you make mistakes, grace picks you up and sets you back on track. It is relentless, it is unearned, and it is undeniable. People may not understand you, but they cannot deny the evidence on your life. That is how grace works. It makes you a sign and a wonder. It makes people look at your life and say, surely the hand of God is upon them. And this grace is not for show. It is not about applause or visibility. It is for assignment. God does not waste grace. When He places it on your life, it is because He intends to use your life. Every time you rise, every time you succeed in unfamiliar territory, every time you shine without striving, it is pointing to something greater than you. You become a walking testimony, a reflection of what God can do with someone who simply says yes. If you have felt like things just happen around you that you cannot explain, if you have walked through doors you did not even knock on, if people have been drawn to you without you understanding why, you may be walking in this unexplainable grace. Do not ignore it. Do not minimize it, and do not take credit for it. Recognize it as evidence of your calling, as a marker that you are not just gifted, you are chosen. But as we look deeper into what it means to be chosen, we must also acknowledge that this grace does not always make life easier. The same mark that brings favor can also attract resistance. Many chosen ones have walked through unusual opposition from the very beginning, and that too is a sign. Let us now move to the next evidence. Your life has been marked by deep and early opposition. When God places His hand on someone's life, the enemy often takes notice long before the person understands what is happening. This is why so many chosen individuals face spiritual resistance from an early age. The attacks are not random. They are calculated attempts to derail the chosen before they awaken to their purpose. Some of the most anointed vessels in Scripture and in life bear stories of childhood pain, rejection, and trauma. It is not just hardship, it is a spiritual signature. The enemy is not attacking where you are. He is attacking where you are going. For many, the opposition began in the home. Maybe you were born into a family marked by dysfunction. Perhaps you experienced abandonment or abuse. Maybe your gifts were misunderstood or ignored. These patterns create wounds, and the enemy tries to use those wounds to write a false identity on your soul. You grow up questioning your worth, your voice, and your place in the world. But in the midst of that confusion, something sacred is still being formed. God is not the author of pain, but He is a master at using it. The very opposition that tried to destroy you becomes the soil where your authority is birthed. Opposition does not always come violently. Sometimes it comes subtly. You tried to fit in, but something always made you stand out. You longed for normalcy, but life kept assigning you abnormal burdens. Your mind matured early. Your emotions felt things others ignored. Your life never quite aligned with the patterns of those around you. That tension was not rejection from God, it was preparation. It was God allowing friction so that you would never settle into a version of life that was too small for your destiny. This early struggle becomes a holy filter. It sharpens your sensitivity. It makes you pay attention to what others overlook. It births compassion. It teaches you to pray. It breaks your pride. And it draws you to God in ways comfort never could. Many people found Jesus in the furnace of affliction, not because God wanted them to suffer, but because the suffering made them search for something real. And when they found Him, Their faith was not theory, it was experience. That is what makes the chosen dangerous. They are not speaking from borrowed revelation, they have lived it. Spiritual opposition also comes in the form of delay. The chosen often face prolonged seasons where nothing seems to move. Doors that open for others remain shut. Prayers take longer to answer. Progress feels slow and painful. This is not punishment. It is divine pacing. God knows that some blessings are too heavy to carry prematurely. So he uses the waiting to build strength, endurance, and trust. The enemy may try to use that delay to whisper lies of inadequacy. But if you pay attention, you will see that something deep is being built inside of you. And when you finally begin to rise, the resistance often intensifies. People you love may suddenly become cold. Opportunities may be followed by strange obstacles. Your name may be misunderstood. Your intentions may be questioned. These are not coincidences. They are spiritual birth pangs. When the chosen begin to step into alignment, hell trembles, because the enemy knows that once you truly know who you are and who sent you, you become unstoppable. Still, opposition is not a curse. It is confirmation. If you have wondered why your journey has been so hard, why certain patterns of pain seem to follow you, why breakthrough seems to come at a higher cost, it may be because you are chosen. The resistance is not about your past, it is about your future. The enemy has seen glimpses of what will happen when you fully walk in your assignment, and he is terrified. But his opposition is powerless against a surrendered vessel. And God wastes nothing. Every wound, every delay, every rejection, every silent cry has been seen. Heaven has recorded it all. And when the time is right, the God who allowed the crushing will reveal the oil that came from it. The chosen are not shaped on stages. They are formed in the shadows. And those who have endured the fire are the ones who will carry the flame. As we move forward, it is important to understand that being chosen is not only marked by hardship, it is also marked by a persistent divine pursuit. Even when you try to walk away, something pulls you back. Let us now explore the third sign. You feel a divine pull toward God that never truly leaves you. One of the clearest signs that you are chosen by God is the unshakable pull toward Him that never leaves you. It may not always be loud or consistent, but it is always present. Even in your seasons of disobedience, even when you drift, even when shame tries to silence your worship, something in your spirit longs for God. It is a quiet hunger, a whisper that finds you in moments of stillness. It is not driven by guilt. It is not manufactured by religion. It is divine pursuit. This pull does not always make sense. You may have tried to live like everyone else. You may have attempted to numb your spirit with distractions. You may have surrounded yourself with noise so you would not hear it. But it keeps coming back. In your low points, it gently calls you higher. When you succeed in places that do not fulfill you, it reminds you that you were made for more. It is not just desire. It is destiny waking you up from within. The chosen are not allowed to stay asleep for long. God keeps interrupting the silence with a whisper that sounds like home. You can try to forget God, but God will not forget you. His hand remains on the chosen even when their feet wander. Jonah tried to run, but God sent a storm to bring him back, not out of anger, but out of mercy. The same pattern plays out in the lives of those set apart. You make a wrong turn, and God gently blocks it. You form plans, and something falls through. At the time, it feels frustrating. Later, you realize it was protection. The divine pull is not just emotional. It shapes your path, disrupts your distractions, and guides your steps even when you are unaware. This pull also reveals itself in unusual conviction. What others do casually burdens you deeply. What others laugh at grieves your spirit. You may try to join the crowd, but you cannot stay long. The Holy Spirit tugs at your conscience, not to shame you, but to guard your assignment. The chosen carry a sensitivity that will not allow them to settle in places they do not belong. This does not make you better than anyone. It simply means you are being preserved. God cannot use what he cannot separate, and separation often begins with an invisible pull that sets you apart from within. Sometimes this pull shows up in hunger. Not physical hunger, but a longing to understand deeper things. You find yourself drawn to scripture, to worship, to places of quiet where your spirit can breathe. You may go through seasons where you are not even sure what you are searching for, but something inside you refuses to be satisfied with surface. This is a holy discontent. It is a sign that God is awakening your spirit to realities beyond what is seen. The world cannot satisfy you because you were not made for it. You were made for him. Other times, the pull shows up in brokenness. You hit rock bottom, and instead of running further, you run toward God. In moments of pain, you find yourself praying even when you had not prayed in months. That is not weakness. That is evidence. The chosen have a spiritual compass that points back to God no matter how far they drift. You may not always understand it. You may feel unworthy of it. But that is the beauty of grace. God draws you not because you are perfect, but because you are purposed. This divine pull is often misunderstood. People may say you are inconsistent, emotional, or indecisive. But what they cannot see is the inner wrestling between what your flesh wants and what your spirit knows. This is not a sign of failure. It is a sign of calling. The chosen often wrestle before they surrender, but once they yield, they become instruments of great power and purity. The pull is not meant to frustrate you. It is meant to lead you. It is God saying, I still want you, I still need you, come back. And when you respond to that pull, even weakly, heaven moves. One whisper from you activates angels. One yes from you unlocks alignment. One step in God's direction opens a floodgate of restoration. That is why you should never ignore the pull. Do not harden your heart when he calls. Even if you do not know where to begin with surrender, because what is pulling you is not religion, it is a relationship. This is another mark of the chosen. They cannot run forever. God will always come after them. But when they stop running and begin to walk with him, something else begins to happen. They find themselves influencing others without trying. Let us now explore the next sign. You influence people without trying. Another fascinating sign that God has chosen you is the quiet weight they carry. It is not about how loud they are, how many followers they have, or how eloquently they speak. It is a spiritual presence. People feel it when you enter a room. They listen more closely when you speak. They are drawn to your words even when you are not trying to teach. The chosen carry influence without seeking it. It is not charisma. It is the residue of communion with God. This kind of influence cannot be explained by natural means. You may not hold a position of authority, but people still seek your advice. You may be the youngest in the room, but others look to you for guidance. Your words carry weight because they are seasoned by your walk with God. You speak from a place of spiritual depth, not performance. People feel safe around you. They open up without knowing why. They trust your voice because it carries the tone of wisdom, even when you are unsure of yourself. This is not something you manufacture, it is something you carry. True spiritual influence is never about domination. It is about presence. The chosen often have a calming effect in chaotic spaces. Your presence brings clarity. Your prayers shift things. Your discernment protects others. You may not even realize the extent of your impact, but those around you do. They feel your consistency. They notice your integrity. They sense your conviction. and they are inspired by your quiet strength. Influence is not always measured by who follows you. Sometimes it is seen in who refuses to fall apart because you are standing beside them. Sometimes this influence attracts people who are searching for answers. You may find yourself counseling others even when you are still in process yourself. This is not a mistake. God often uses the chosen to pour while they are still healing. There is something about your honesty, your journey, your survival that ministers more than polished speeches ever could. People trust what you say because they can sense that you have lived it. That kind of influence cannot be bought. It is forged in fire. But influence is not always glamorous. It also comes with responsibility. People watch you. They mimic your decisions. They measure their own convictions by your example. That is why the chosen cannot afford to live carelessly. Even in private, your life is a message. Even in weakness, your response is teaching someone how to walk through pain. The chosen may feel invisible in public, but they are often leaders in secret. What you do behind closed doors matters. Your integrity matters. Your obedience matters, because your life is shaping more than just your own story. There are moments when this influence will feel heavy. You may want to retreat. You may feel the burden of being the one others turn to. You may feel unequipped or overwhelmed. But remember, you were never meant to lead in your strength. The influence you carry is not a result of your perfection. It is the fruit of your surrender. As long as you stay connected to the one who called you, your impact will continue to multiply. You do not need a platform to be powerful. You only need to remain yielded. You may also notice that your influence shows up in how people respond after encountering you. They begin to pray more, they think more deeply, they heal, they change direction. This is not manipulation, it is alignment. When your life is in sync with heaven, it becomes a mirror. People see God more clearly because of you. They may not always tell you. They may even resist you. But over time, the seed you plant grows. That is the hidden power of divine influence. It works even in silence. Do not underestimate what you carry. You may never speak to crowds. You may never hold a microphone. But if you have changed even one life by being obedient to God, you have done more than many who seek fame. Heaven does not measure influence the way earth does. It measures obedience. It measures fruit. And those who are truly chosen will always bear fruit in places they did not expect. As you continue to carry this quiet influence, something deeper begins to take root. You are not just changing others. God is changing you. Your thoughts, your responses, your desires are all shifting. There is a transformation happening inside of you that cannot be denied. Let us now explore the next sign. You are being transformed from the inside out. The journey of the chosen is not merely external. It is not only about doors opening, favor increasing, or people being drawn to you. One of the clearest and most sacred signs that you are chosen by God is the deep inner transformation that begins to take place. It is the quiet reshaping of your thoughts, your desires, your reactions, and even your ambitions. This is not something that happens overnight. It is often slow, sacred, and largely invisible to others. But you feel it. Something is changing in you. You are not who you used to be, and you know you will never be the same. At first, the changes are subtle. You begin to lose your appetite for things that once entertained you. Certain conversations no longer feel comfortable. Certain environments start to make your spirit uneasy. You feel a gentle nudge to withdraw, to seek silence, to make room for the voice of God. Your cravings begin to shift. You want truth. You want purity. You want to be near the things that bring peace to your spirit and not just pleasure to your flesh. These are not changes you forced. They are signs of grace working within you. This transformation begins in your private life. You start to repent more quickly. You recognize when your heart is drifting. You feel the weight of compromise more deeply. Conviction becomes a gift and not a punishment. You begin to invite God into areas you used to hide. Not because someone pressured you, but because you want to be clean. You want your motives to be pure. You want your love for God to be real and not just performative. This is what happens when God marks you for more. He starts by sanctifying your interior world. As this inward work continues, you start to respond differently to adversity. What used to make you bitter now humbles you. What used to offend you now becomes a moment to practice grace. You are still human. You still feel deeply, but you do not react with the same sharpness. Your emotions are no longer your master. The Holy Spirit becomes your compass, and though you still fall, you now rise faster. That is the power of inward transformation. It does not make you flawless. It makes you responsive to correction and quicker to realign. The chosen cannot remain stagnant. The deeper God calls you, the more He works on the roots. He begins to reveal hidden pride, fear, insecurity, and unforgiveness. Not to shame you, but to heal you, to clean the vessel He intends to use. Sometimes this process is painful. You will cry over truths about yourself you never saw before, but you will also rejoice, because the same God who reveals your wounds also covers them in mercy. He does not expose you to destroy you. He exposes to rebuild. He takes what was broken and makes it holy. This transformation will not always be visible to others at first. People may still view you through the lens of who you used to be. They may not see your progress. They may question your motives. But God sees the shift, and in time, so will the fruit. What is being formed in private will eventually shine in public. You will walk differently, speak differently, love differently, forgive more easily, live more simply. And people will begin to ask what happened to you. Not because you told them, but because they can see the evidence of a life surrendered. One of the most powerful parts of this transformation is that it gives you authority. Not the kind that comes from knowledge alone, but the kind that comes from being crushed and rebuilt by God Himself. You do not just speak truth, you embody it. You do not just preach change, you live it. And because of that, your words carry power. You become a vessel not just of knowledge, but of encounter. People experience the presence of God through your very being. As the inner work continues, you find that the things that used to matter no longer carry the same weight. Titles lose their appeal. Applause becomes hollow. You begin to live for an audience of one. You seek depth over hype, presence over performance, and purity over popularity. That is when you know God has truly taken over. Your life becomes a mirror of His heart. And as this inner transformation deepens, you begin to notice something else. Your life has become increasingly set apart, not by force, but by design. Before a chosen one can truly walk in the fullness of their calling, they must also learn how to carry the weight of it. Being chosen is not just a title, it is a trust. And with that trust, often comes a type of struggle that feels too heavy for human strength alone. It is a path that requires endurance, not just excitement. There are days when the vision seems too far away, nights when the pain of separation, rejection, or spiritual warfare feels like too much. There are seasons when the cost of being set apart becomes more real than the promise that called you. But God does not leave His chosen without help. He does not give mantles without also providing strategies for how to carry them. The same God who chose you has equipped you. You may not feel strong enough, but strength is not something you feel before the battle. It is something that is built in the middle of it. The key is learning how to handle the struggle without forfeiting the assignment, how to survive the pressure without losing your posture, how to remain surrendered even when the weight feels like too much. This is where divine strategy becomes vital. The chosen must not only know who they are, but they must also know how to endure. They must learn how to guard their heart, steward their gift, and stay close to the one who called them. Let us now explore 5 powerful ways a chosen one can handle the struggle that often comes with their calling. We begin with the secret weapon that sustains all others. Developing intimacy with God in the secret place. If there is one place the chosen must learn to dwell, it is in the secret place with God. Not the public stage, not the approval of men, not even the success of their own ministry or influence. The secret place is where strength is restored. It is where burdens are lifted. It is where clarity is given when confusion begins to cloud the mind. For those whom God has called and set apart, the secret place is not optional. It is survival. The weight of being chosen is real. It is not simply a feeling of destiny. It is a pressure to remain faithful when others fall away. It is a burden to intercede when no one else is praying. It is the challenge of walking a path that others do not understand. Without intimacy with God, that weight will crush you. But when you remain hidden in Him, the weight becomes fuel. The burden becomes a fire that pushes you deeper instead of driving you away. The secret place is where God reminds you who you are. When the world calls you names, when people misunderstand your motives, when the assignment feels too heavy, the voice of God becomes your anchor. He speaks identity over your insecurity. He reaffirms your purpose even when the fruit is not visible yet. This is the power of hidden communion. You come in heavy and leave refreshed. You come in scattered and leave whole. In that place, you do not have to perform. You just have to be still. It is in the secret place that you learn the language of the Spirit. You stop praying surface prayers and start listening. You begin to discern His nudges. You learn when to speak and when to remain silent. You stop asking for comfort and start asking for closeness. In that place, your prayers change. Your perspective matures. You are no longer begging God to use you. You are asking Him to cleanse you, to search your heart, to make you a vessel He can trust. This is what the chosen learn early. The higher the call, the deeper the consecration must be. The secret place also becomes your place of warfare. Not every battle is fought with raised hands and shouted declarations. Some are fought in silence, on your knees, in tears, in whispers. This is where God trains your hands for war, where He shows you the real enemy, where He gives you strategy to overcome what you could never conquer in your own strength. The chosen do not fight in public what they have not won in private. That is why the secret place must be protected at all costs. It is also the place where wounds are healed. Many chosen ones carry deep pain, rejection, abandonment, misunderstanding. These scars can poison the gift if not surrendered to God. In the secret place, God does not just anoint you, He mends you. He reminds you that being chosen does not mean you are less human. It means you must learn to heal faster so you can keep moving. He teaches you how to forgive, how to release offense, how to guard your heart without hardening it. You do not leave the secret place the same way you entered. That is the beauty of it. You cannot build a public life of purpose without a private life of prayer. You cannot pour if you are never filled. You cannot hear God clearly if you are always surrounded by noise. The chosen must make time for stillness. It will never be convenient, but it will always be necessary. The secret place is where your roots go deep, where your foundation is laid. And when the storms come, it will be your lifeline, not your gifting, not your charisma, not your network. Your secret history with God is what will keep you when everything else feels like it is falling apart. There will be seasons when you do not feel anything in that place. No goosebumps, no powerful visions, but still you show up. Because it is not about emotion. It is about consistency. and God honors consistency. Every moment you spend with him is a seed. Every whisper is a thread in a greater tapestry you may not yet see. He is building something in you that cannot be shaken. He is preparing you for something your current eyes cannot yet understand. And when you emerge from that place, even if nothing looks different on the outside, something is stronger on the inside. You walk taller, you carry peace, you speak with wisdom, because you have been with God. That is what marks the chosen. Not talent, not popularity, presence, and that presence is only accessed in the secret place. But intimacy with God is not the only strategy. The chosen must also learn how to view suffering, not as a punishment, but as preparation. Let us now explore how embracing suffering as a tool for refinement can change everything. The chosen are not exempt from suffering. In fact, they often walk through more pain than most. But their pain is not wasted. It is not meaningless. For those marked by God, suffering becomes a furnace, a place where impurities are burned away and the true weight of their calling is formed. Many people misunderstand the role of hardship in the life of the chosen. They assume struggle means failure or abandonment. But in the kingdom of God, struggle often signals preparation. It is a sign that something sacred is being forged within. When you are chosen, suffering becomes one of the primary tools God uses to shape your character. It reveals what is hidden. It humbles pride. It softens hearts that have grown hard. It teaches patience in a world that demands speed. It exposes idols. It strengthens your faith not in theory, but in practice. In suffering, you come to know God in a way you never could through comfort. He becomes more than a theology. He becomes your anchor, your portion, your breath. You stop speaking of him based on what others told you. You begin to speak from experience. Pain has a way of stripping away what is shallow. It cuts through performance and pushes you into raw honesty. In those moments, the chosen learn to pray real prayers, not rehearsed ones. They cry, they question, they wrestle. And God is not offended. He meets them there, just as he met Job in the whirlwind, just as he met Elijah under the juniper tree. He does not rush the process. He walks through it with you. Suffering becomes holy ground when you recognize that God is not waiting for you to escape it. He is revealing himself in the middle of it. The enemy wants you to interpret suffering as rejection. He whispers that if God really loved you, he would have spared you. But the truth is often the opposite. Because he loves you, he allows the fire, not to destroy you, but to refine you, to burn off what cannot remain, to strengthen what must endure. Just as gold must pass through fire to be purified, so must the chosen. You are not being punished. You are being prepared. The struggle is shaping the weight of your anointing. When you shift your mindset about suffering, everything changes. You stop asking why and begin to ask what. What are you forming in me, God? What do you want me to see? What is this pain producing? This posture of surrender opens your spirit to receive wisdom that others miss. While some collapse under pressure, the chosen rise, not because it is easy, but because they have learned to lean. They know the secret of leaning into the Father when everything else falls away. They know how to bleed and still believe. There is also an authority that comes through suffering, the kind that cannot be taught in books or earned through titles. It is the authority of survival, the power that comes from walking through fire and not smelling like smoke. When the chosen speak, there is weight behind their words, not because of what they know intellectually, but because of what they have lived. Their pain becomes a testimony. Their scars become proof that grace is real. People do not follow the chosen because they are perfect. They follow because they see someone who has suffered well. Suffering also makes the chosen more compassionate. When you have been broken, you see the broken differently. You love more deeply, you serve more humbly, you judge more slowly. You begin to move with the heart of Jesus because you understand what it feels like to be in the valley. The chosen are often trusted with more influence after they have walked through intense affliction. Not because God enjoys their pain, but because they are safer carriers of His power. They know it is not about them. They know how easily they could have lost their mind if not for His mercy. That kind of awareness produces a different kind of leader. If you are in a season of suffering right now, do not despise it. Do not rush to escape it. Ask God to help you see it through His eyes. He is forming something eternal in you, something no man can give and no demon can steal. You are being stretched, not to break, but to expand. You are being emptied, not to be left dry, but to be filled with something purer. Trust the process, even when you cannot trace the purpose. And as you walk through this fire, remember, you are not alone. Many who came before you endured the same. Joseph in prison, David in caves, Paul in chains, Jesus on the cross. Suffering is a thread that runs through every story of greatness in the Bible. You are not cursed, you are being carved. As we continue this journey of understanding how the chosen handle the weight of their calling, let us now explore a vital part of endurance. Even though your path is set apart, you do not have to walk it alone. Let us now look at the importance of surrounding yourself with Spirit-led counsel and community. Though the journey of the chosen often feels lonely, it is not meant to be walked in isolation. God may call you apart, but He never calls you to be alone forever. There is a divine difference between separation and isolation. Separation is for consecration. Isolation is often the enemy's trap. While there are moments when God draws you into solitude to shape you privately, He also provides Spirit-led people who carry wisdom, strength, and discernment for your journey. One of the ways the chosen remain stable under pressure is by intentionally surrounding themselves with the right voices. There is something powerful about having counsel that hears from God. It is not enough to be around people who love you. You need people who can see you in the Spirit, people who are not impressed by your gift, but invested in your growth. People who can correct you in love, pray you through attacks, and remind you of the vision when your mind grows weary. When you are chosen, the warfare is heavier. The spiritual terrain is more sensitive. You cannot afford to lean on carnal relationships for divine assignments. God often places at least one or two people around the chosen who carry spiritual maturity and a burden to intercede. These are not always the people you expect. They may not look impressive outwardly, but they are watchmen, intercessors, mentors, prophetic friends who know how to speak life into dry bones. When God sends these people, receive them with humility. They are not there to compete with you. They are there to cover you. The chosen cannot be casual about covenant relationships. They must guard them and honor them. Because when the warfare intensifies, it is these relationships that will often keep your hands lifted. Spirit-led counsel also helps protect your discernment. Sometimes when the pressure is high and your emotions are clouded, you may begin to lose sight of what God originally said. You may feel tempted to take shortcuts, to quit, or to accept something that looks good but is not from God. In those moments, the right counsel acts like a compass. They remind you of what God said. They help you test the spirits. They do not just agree with you. They point you back to truth, even when that truth is uncomfortable. Community also brings accountability. And for the chosen, accountability is protection. When you carry influence, it is easy to begin believing your own press. It is easy to get caught in a cycle of performance and forget the posture of surrender. But when you walk with people who love your soul more than your status, they will challenge you to stay low. They will ask the hard questions. They will see past the ministry and check on the man or woman behind it. The chosen cannot grow without this kind of sharpening. Proverbs says, Iron sharpens iron, but that only happens through intentional proximity. Sometimes the greatest gift God will give you is not a platform, but a person. One who can weep with you, fast with you, confront you, and still believe in you. One who does not idolize you, but holds you accountable to your calling. This kind of support system will not always be large. In fact, it is often very small, but the quality of these relationships is far more important than the quantity. Do not despise the few. The chosen often walk with a remnant, not a crowd. It is also important to remember that the presence of spiritual counsel does not mean you depend on people more than God. It means you recognize that God often speaks through people. He will give someone a word of wisdom at just the right time. He will put your name on someone's heart to pray without knowing the full details. That is how He builds the body. That is how He reminds us that though our assignments may be individual, we are still connected. If you find yourself walking alone right now, ask God to send the right people. And while you wait, be the kind of person you are praying for. Be trustworthy, be humble, be spirit-sensitive. Sometimes God delays the right community because He is first forming the right character in you. But when you are ready, He will align you with those who understand your language and honor your oil. The chosen must walk wisely in this area. Not every friend is a confidant. Not every listener is safe. Discern who is assigned to your life and who is just curious about your calling. When God reveals them, cherish them. Lean into that divine connection and allow yourself to be poured into, not just poured out. As we continue this journey of equipping the chosen for the weight of their calling, let us now explore the power of holding on to the promise in the middle of the process. Because sometimes the only thing keeping you steady is the memory of what God said. Let us now step into the next truth. When the chosen walk through long and painful seasons, one of the most important things they must learn to do is hold on to the promise. Not the circumstances, not the opinions, not even their emotions. The promise is what sustains. The process may be unpredictable. The path may twist in directions you did not foresee, but the word of the Lord remains. And when God speaks a promise over your life, He does not forget it. He watches over His word to perform it. But the challenge is that time has a way of testing what you believe. Delay has a way of making you question what you once celebrated. This is why the chosen must be rooted in what God said, not in what they see. There will be moments when the process feels like the opposite of the promise. God tells you that you will be a leader, yet you are hidden. God tells you that you will walk in healing, yet your body is afflicted. God gives you a vision of restoration, yet your relationships are falling apart. These contradictions are not a sign that the promise was false. They are often the very conditions God uses to test the purity of your faith. Can you still believe when everything around you is screaming otherwise? Can you hold on when your hands are trembling? The enemy's favorite tactic in the life of the chosen is to use delay to plant doubt. If he can get you to question what God said, he knows he can distract you from the path. He knows he cannot cancel the promise, but if he can convince you to walk away from it, he wins. This is why warfare often intensifies right after God gives a word, because the word carries weight. The word carries destiny. And if you are not anchored in what God said, you will start to seek validation from voices God never sent. Holding on to the promise requires reminding yourself often of what you heard in the secret place. The chosen do not wait for others to affirm them. They rehearse the word of the Lord in prayer. They speak it back to God. They write it down. They revisit it when their soul is weary. They do not treat prophecy like a fortune cookie. They treat it like a map, a divine guidepost to navigate the wilderness. When you know where you are going, the detours no longer destroy you. They just refine you. It is also important to remember that the promise is not just about where you are going. It is about who you are becoming. God is not just preparing the blessing for you, He is preparing you for the blessing. The delay is developing strength. The silence is developing depth. The waiting is producing endurance. What good is a crown if your character cannot carry it? What good is influence if you are still insecure? The process is not punishment. It is preparation. And when you finally arrive, you will know you did not get there because of shortcuts. You got there because you held on when others let go. God never gives a promise without also giving grace to endure. You may feel weak, but you are not without help. The Spirit intercedes for you when you do not know what to pray. Angels are assigned to you even when you cannot see them. Heaven is invested in your obedience. That is why you cannot give up. You cannot let disappointment bury the vision. You cannot let weariness replace your worship. Even if you have to crawl, keep going. Even if your prayers are whispers, keep praying. The promise is still alive. There will come a day when you look back and realize that the promise was not delayed. It was right on time. And you will thank God that He did not give it to you when you first asked. Because now you are ready. Now you are stable. Now you are surrendered. The struggle built something eternal in you. And the testimony will be sweeter because of the tears it cost you. As the chosen walk this path, they must remember that the promise is not an endpoint. It is a journey of trust, and trust is tested most in the middle. When nothing makes sense, and yet you choose to believe anyway, that is faith. That is surrender. That is the posture of the chosen. But holding on to the promise is not the only key. The chosen must also learn to submit to God's timing with humility and trust. One of the greatest lessons every chosen one must learn is how to submit to God's timing with humility and trust. The weight of the calling is not just in the doing, it is also in the waiting. The promise may be clear, the vision may be real, the passion may burn hot, but the release will not come until God says the time is right. This is where many chosen ones struggle, not because they lack gifting, but because they have not yet mastered the art of yielding. Yielding is not passive, it is an active surrender that says, God, I trust your calendar more than my clock. Waiting on God requires a humility that accepts His wisdom above our urgency. In a world obsessed with speed, God often develops His servants in secret. He hides them, not to punish them, but to preserve them. He silences applause so they can hear His whisper. He delays public validation so they will seek private consecration. The chosen must resist the temptation to rush into visibility. A premature platform can destroy what an unformed character cannot sustain. God's timing is not delayed, it is deliberate. To submit to God's timing means learning to be content with process. Not complacent, but content. There is a difference. Complacency says nothing will ever happen. Contentment says I trust what God is doing even when I cannot see it. When you submit to God's timing, you stop comparing your life to others. You no longer use someone else's journey as a measuring stick for your own. You begin to see delay as divine preparation, not divine punishment. You learn to walk by faith and not by sight, because your confidence is rooted in who sent you, not how long it takes. The chosen often feel the weight of their assignment before they see the fulfillment. They dream big while living small. They carry a word while walking through wilderness. This contrast can make the weight feel unbearable. But it is in the weight that endurance is born. Patience is not the absence of desire. It is the strength to desire without demanding. It is the ability to say, even if you do not do it when I want, I will still wait until you do. Submitting to God's timing also means refusing to manipulate doors open. The chosen do not need to force what God has authored. What is divine cannot be stolen. what is yours will not miss you. Trusting God's timing means you stop begging for opportunities. You start preparing for them. You stop chasing affirmation. You start cultivating intimacy. You stop striving and start stewarding. You say yes to this season, even if it does not look like the one you imagined. You obey even when obedience seems to delay the outcome, because you know that God is not only writing the story, He is also editing it, and His edits are always perfect. There is a sacred peace that comes when the chosen truly submit to God's timing. Anxiety begins to lose its voice. Desperation begins to fade. You stop asking, "When will it happen?" and begin to ask, "What are you doing in me now?" That shift changes everything. It transforms your waiting room into a birthing room. You start to value the hidden years. You honor the seasons of silence. You embrace the slow work of God, because you trust that when the fullness of time comes, nothing can stop what God has set in motion. Some of the greatest men and women in Scripture waited for years before they stepped into their purpose. Joseph had dreams but served in prison. Moses had a calling but spent 40 years in the wilderness. David was anointed as king but returned to tend sheep. Even Jesus waited 30 years for a ministry that lasted 3. The pattern is clear. Preparation always precedes manifestation. The chosen must trust that God is not just working on the promise, He is working on them. If you are in a season of waiting right now, do not waste it. Do not despise it. Ask God to teach you what He is forming in this time. Let patience have its full work. Yield your will to His. Surrender your timeline. There is no safer place than in the hands of a God who sees the end from the beginning. And when the appointed time comes, you will not have to chase the door. It will open before you, and you will walk through it with the grace, strength, and humility of someone who was not just chosen, but also prepared. This brings us to the final turn in this journey. We have explored why the chosen struggle, how to endure it, and how to recognize the grace behind it. Let us now turn our focus to why God chooses people and refines them before use. When it comes to enforcing His will on the earth, God chooses to partner with people. He is all-powerful and can do all things, yet by His divine design, He gave mankind dominion over the earth. As Psalm chapter 115 verse 16 declares, "The highest heavens belong to the Lord, but the earth He has given to mankind." This means that for God's will to be fully established in the natural realm, He often seeks yielded vessels to work through. Even Jesus had to come in the form of a man to redeem mankind because the authority to function legally on earth was entrusted to humanity. But God does not use people in their raw, unrefined state. He calls them as they are, but before He launches them into purpose, He puts them through a process. The calling may be divine, but the vessel must be prepared. This process is not punishment, it is protection. It is not God withholding destiny. It is God ensuring the destiny does not crush the person carrying it. Here are 5 reasons the process is necessary. The first reason is that the process removes the parts of us that would sabotage the assignment. When God calls someone, He sees not only their potential, but also their present condition. He knows what He placed inside them and the assignment He intends them to carry. But He also sees the flaws that could eventually sabotage that assignment if left unaddressed. And so, before promotion comes, before doors open and mantles rest, God begins a deep and often uncomfortable process of purification. This is not to humiliate the chosen, but to heal them. It is not to punish them, but to prepare them. There are parts of us that cannot coexist with the weight of the calling. Not because God does not love us with them, but because those parts will leak under pressure. They will speak when we should be silent. They will seek validation when we should be grounded. They will act out of fear when we are called to walk in faith. So God, in His mercy, begins to deal with the inner man. He confronts the insecurity, the pride, the bitterness, the comparison, the entitlement, the anger, the self-reliance. He shines a light into the corners we thought we had hidden from everyone, even ourselves. He exposes what could destroy the mission later, not to condemn us, but to invite us into transformation. If left alone, those internal fractures become spiritual liabilities. A person with unresolved rejection will misinterpret correction and push away those God sends to help them. Someone with pride will confuse their gift for God's endorsement and start operating in their own strength. One still wrestling with offense will carry bitterness into places meant to release healing. And so the process begins, sometimes quietly, sometimes painfully, but always with a purpose. God will not send you into a battle that your character cannot sustain. He is more concerned with your becoming than your arriving. This is why the process feels like fire. Because it is. It is the fire of sanctification, the fire of refinement, the fire that burns away everything that is not of Him. When you feel like everything is being stripped, it is because the parts of you that are false cannot go into what is true. The things that served you in survival mode will not serve you in kingdom purpose. God is jealous over His vessels. He will not allow you to carry His glory while still holding on to what competes with it. This fire is not just about removing sin. It is about removing dependence on anything other than Him. You may lose relationships, not because they were bad people, but because they fed your ego more than your spirit. You may lose positions, not because you were unfaithful, but because He is teaching you that identity does not come from titles. You may lose routines, distractions, and comforts that once made you feel safe, because the calling requires a new foundation, one built on Him alone. One of the greatest dangers for the chosen is stepping into visibility before they are internally ready. The applause can become addictive. The influence can inflate the ego. The warfare can crush the soul that has not been fortified. This is why God takes His time. This is why you are hidden. This is why the breaking feels so intense. It is not because God has forgotten you. It is because He is forming you. In the darkness where no one sees, He is doing surgery. He is correcting mindsets. He is healing wounds. He is deepening your roots so that when the winds come, you will not fall. The process is where you unlearn the false narratives you picked up in your past. It is where you stop needing to prove yourself. It is where you realize that you were never chosen because you were perfect. You were chosen because God delights in taking broken vessels and filling them with Himself. But those vessels must be yielded. The cracks must be sealed. The pride must be crushed. The ambition must be purified. When you look back, you will thank Him for every closed door, for every season of obscurity, for every delay that felt like denial. Because without the stripping, you would have stepped into purpose, still carrying the very things that would sabotage it. But now, refined by fire, you are not just gifted, you are grounded. Not just anointed, you are trustworthy. Not just called, you are ready. And yet, this is only the beginning. After the stripping comes the reshaping. The next step in the process is not just about what is removed, but what is revealed. Let us now turn to the next dimension of refinement, how God separates your identity from your assignment. When God chooses someone for a great assignment, He is not only calling them to a task, but to a deeper revelation of who they are in Him. One of the most essential lessons a chosen vessel must learn is the difference between identity and assignment. God never intended for what you do to become who you are. The process, with all its delays and discomfort, is often God's way of teaching you that your identity must be rooted in who you are as His child, not in what you produce, achieve, or accomplish. It is easy to wrap your worth around your gift. It is tempting to feel important because of the doors that open, the people who applaud you, or the positions you hold. But these things are temporary. They are assignments. They are tools. They are platforms for ministry, not definitions of personhood. God will often strip these away or pause their manifestation so that you can meet yourself apart from the performance. He wants you to stand strong even when nothing is happening. He wants you to know that you are loved even when you are not being used, that you are seen even in the wilderness, that your value does not rise and fall with your level of activity. The refining process exposes any hidden craving for identity rooted in success. God will let you taste silence, not as a punishment, but as a test. When the invitations stop, when the doors remain closed, when the work slows down and you feel unseen, what do you believe about yourself then? If your identity is still tied to the applause, you will question your calling in the silence. If your identity is still tied to productivity, you will feel useless in seasons of rest. This is why God isolates his chosen ones before he reveals them. In the quiet, he reintroduces you to yourself through his eyes. There is something holy about being hidden. In that place, you discover who you are without the crowd. You learn how to worship when no one is watching. You learn how to pray when there is no audience. You learn to stop proving and start abiding. The process teaches you that you are not chosen because of your gift. You are chosen because of his grace. You are not valuable because of what you do. You are valuable because of who you belong to. This revelation is foundational. Without it, you will try to earn what has already been freely given. Without it, your ministry becomes performance and your influence becomes an idol. God is not interested in building your brand. He is building your soul. He is removing every false layer of identity that was shaped by trauma, comparison, and pride. He is healing the parts of you that believed you had to achieve in order to be accepted. He is showing you that your worth was established before your calling was ever revealed. When you truly believe this, you stop striving. You stop competing. You stop chasing significance and start resting in your sonship or daughtership. This process also protects you from becoming addicted to visibility. Visibility is a byproduct of purpose, not its reward. God hides you not because you are unworthy, but because you are not ready to carry both purpose and pressure at the same time. He wants to make sure that if the microphone is taken, the calling remains. That if the stage disappears, your worship does not. That if the platform never comes, you still love him just the same. Many fall because they mistake assignment for identity. When their assignment changes or pauses, they lose their sense of value. But the one who has gone through the process knows that calling is not performance. It is presence. It is obedience. It is intimacy. It is walking with God in the cool of the day before ever speaking to the masses. The process may break your pride. It may remove your title. It may delay your platform. But in exchange, it gives you clarity. It gives you peace. It gives you a rooted identity that hell cannot shake and man cannot validate or cancel. This is how God prepares his chosen. He does not just give them something to do, he shows them who they are. And now that the foundation of identity is firm, the Lord moves deeper. There is still more work to be done. Next, he must deal with the appetite, because what you crave will determine how you live. And the chosen must not only be secure in who they are, they must also hunger for the right things. Let us now look at how the process rewrites your appetite. When God calls someone, he does not just change what they do, he changes what they crave. The process of refinement touches more than your behavior. It rewires your inner longing. Before the chosen can carry the weight of purpose, they must desire the things of God more than the things of the world. Appetite governs pursuit. You will always chase what you hunger for. If you still hunger for applause, for affirmation from people, for platforms and recognition, that hunger will compete with the assignment. So God, in His wisdom, begins to rewrite your appetite. At first, the change feels unnatural. You may find yourself uninterested in things you used to love. The shows you once watched now feel empty. The conversations that once amused you now feel draining. You are not becoming antisocial, you are becoming aware. Your spirit is awakening to higher things. The desire for depth is replacing the thirst for distraction. This is what happens when God begins to rewire your appetite. He removes the taste for noise and replaces it with hunger for stillness. He removes the thrill of empty moments and replaces it with the desire to hear His whisper. This transformation does not happen overnight. It unfolds gradually in the quiet and often lonely spaces of your journey. You may look around and see others still indulging in what you have lost taste for. Do not compare. Do not envy. You are being set apart. You are not being punished. You are being prepared. The chosen must live with a different appetite because they are called to carry something sacred. When you are hungry for His presence, it shows in your choices. You prioritize your time differently. You guard your heart more fiercely. You fast not just because you need breakthrough, but because you want to stay sensitive. The process teaches you to starve the flesh so the spirit can thrive. When God starts to pull you away from the unnecessary, it is because your assignment requires clarity. Not everything is sinful, but not everything is helpful. You begin to discern what is simply a weight. A conversation may not be evil, but it dulls your discernment. A friend may not be wrong, but their company stirs up the old appetite. The Holy Spirit begins to fine-tune your sensitivities. He leads you not just by rules, but by rhythms of hunger. And that hunger, when honored, becomes your compass. As your appetite changes, so does your perspective. You begin to desire substance over sensation. Worship becomes more fulfilling than entertainment. Time in the Word becomes more nourishing than scrolling online. You find joy in what feeds your spirit, rather than what flatters your ego. This shift does not make you better than others. It simply marks the beginning of consecration. It is the evidence that your heart is moving deeper. God is creating a vessel that no longer depends on emotional highs, but is rooted in spiritual discipline. And this new appetite produces fruit. You begin to see transformation in how you pray, how you serve, how you live. Your capacity for patience grows. Your discernment sharpens. Your ability to endure seasons of silence increases. Why? Because the appetite for spiritual things creates strength. The person who hungers for righteousness is the one who will be filled. That hunger opens portals in the spirit. It draws revelation. It stirs visitation. The chosen who learn to crave God more than gain become dangerous to the enemy. But God knows that the enemy also studies appetite. If he cannot block your calling, he will try to distort your hunger. This is why Jesus was tempted with bread in the wilderness. The goal was not just to make him eat, it was to make him satisfy a holy hunger with an unholy method. And that is still the enemy's strategy today. He offers substitutes. He whispers, "You deserve this." But those who have gone through the process learn to say no. Not because they are strong, but because they are surrendered. Not because they do not feel the pull, but because they know what is at stake. Your appetite shapes your future. God does not just look at your skill or your availability. He looks at your appetite. Because what you hunger for will pull you in that direction. And if your appetite is aligned with Him, then your steps will be aligned with purpose. The process, though painful, is God's way of preparing your palate for the purity of His will. Now that you see how hunger is refined, we turn to the next lesson in this sacred journey. The process does not always come with explanation. Often, you will be called to obey when nothing makes sense. So let us now explore how the process trains the chosen to obey without understanding. Obedience is not tested in clarity, it is tested in confusion. It is easy to say yes when you understand the outcome, when the path ahead is well lit, when the promise and the next step align. But what happens when God tells you to move and does not explain why? What do you do when He calls you to let go of something you thought He gave? When He asks for surrender without giving you a timeline? That is where true obedience is formed. That is where the process teaches the chosen to walk by faith and not by sight. Many people want to be used by God, but hesitate when the instructions do not make sense. The refining journey strips you of the need to understand before you obey. It teaches you that God's voice is trustworthy even when His instructions are not logical. You begin to follow not because the path is familiar, but because the shepherd is near. You start to obey because you love Him, not because you understand Him. This is how heaven trains a vessel for divine assignments, not by giving answers but by requiring trust. Abraham is one of the clearest examples of this principle. He was told to leave his country, his people and his father's household to go to a land God would show him. Not a land God had explained, not a destination with a clear itinerary, just a word and a direction. Abraham's obedience became the foundation of a covenant, not because he understood, but because he believed. That is the level of trust God seeks from the chosen. A trust that walks even in the dark. A trust that builds even when the blueprint is incomplete. A trust that sacrifices even when the outcome is not visible. The process will bring you to moments where your logic and God's instruction clash. He may ask you to serve in a place you were trying to leave. He may ask you to sow when you are saving. He may ask you to bless someone who betrayed you. These are not random tests. They are divine lessons. God is not trying to confuse you. He is trying to detach your obedience from your understanding. He is trying to teach you that His thoughts are not your thoughts, and His ways are not your ways. When you obey without full comprehension, you declare with your life that He is God and you are not. This kind of obedience also protects you from self-reliance. As long as you only move when it makes sense to you, you are still sitting on the throne. But when you learn to say yes, even with trembling hands, you begin to live in surrender. You begin to see miracles, because God moves in spaces where trust is greater than control. Obedience without understanding becomes the doorway to revelation. It is often after you step out that clarity comes, not before. Think of Peter, called to step out of the boat and walk on water. Jesus did not explain the science of the miracle. He simply said, "Come," and Peter moved. That is what obedience looks like. You hear the word, you move, you trust, and you keep your eyes on the one who called you, not on the waves surrounding you. The process teaches you to stop needing constant confirmation and start walking with steady confidence. Not confidence in yourself, confidence in His voice. The chosen cannot afford to delay obedience while waiting for perfect conditions. Purpose unfolds in pieces. God will not give you all the steps at once. He gives you just enough to move forward in faith. If you wait until it all makes sense, you will miss divine moments. You will hesitate when you should have stepped. You will second guess when you should have surrendered. But those who go through the process learn to obey with a quiet heart. They learn that obedience itself is worship. It is a statement that says, "I do not have to see the whole picture to follow the painter." Obedience without understanding builds a backbone for the assignment. It prepares you for future instructions that will be just as unclear but even more urgent. It teaches you to move quickly when heaven speaks. It builds in you a heart that trusts even when it aches. and it places your loyalty fully in God, not in outcomes. This is what it means to follow Him, not just with your lips, but with your life. As we move deeper into the process, there is still one more layer we must explore. Beyond trust, beyond obedience, there is a kind of strength the chosen must carry. Because this journey is not short, it is long, and only those who have been trained in endurance can last. Let us now look at how the process builds endurance for the long journey ahead. Endurance is not gifted, it is developed. It is shaped in the hidden places where the only witness to your faithfulness is God. The journey of the chosen is not a sprint, it is a marathon, and no one finishes a marathon by accident. You endure it because you have been trained for it. The process is God's training ground. It is not meant to break you, but to build you. It is the slow and steady work of making you strong enough to carry what your calling demands. There are many who are anointed but not yet durable. They have fire but not stamina. They have vision but no strength to carry it through trials, disappointments, or delays. God, in His mercy, does not open every door immediately. He lets you walk through valleys before placing you on mountains so you do not collapse under the weight of your own destiny. Endurance is forged when you keep walking even when everything in you wants to stop. It is built when you choose faithfulness over frustration and consistency over convenience. The process trains your spirit to keep showing up, to keep praying when you feel dry, to keep believing when you feel forgotten, to keep obeying when nothing changes. Endurance is not passive. It is not just waiting around for something to happen. It is active trust. It is choosing to be steady in motion even when your emotions scream otherwise. It is praising in the dark. It is sowing when you are still waiting to reap. It is loving people who may never understand you. It is doing the last thing God said until He says something new. Jesus modeled this endurance. He endured betrayal, rejection, misunderstanding, physical exhaustion, and spiritual warfare. Yet, He kept moving. The cross was not just about suffering, it was about finishing. And those who are chosen must learn to finish well. Many start with passion, but only the processed endure with perseverance. The cost of greatness is not just gifting, it is longevity. And longevity is sustained by endurance. The enemy knows he may not be able to stop your calling, but he will try to wear you out. He will try to make you quit by using time as a weapon. He will whisper, "It's been too long. Maybe God changed His mind. Maybe you heard wrong." He will stir up discouragement. He will magnify delays. But if you have gone through the process, you will know how to wait without wavering. You will learn how to trust without panic. You will understand that delay is not denial, it is divine conditioning. Endurance also teaches you to steward your pace. You do not run ahead of God trying to force outcomes. You walk with Him, trusting His pace. This keeps you from burnout. It protects your soul. It teaches you that fruitfulness is not in rushing, but in remaining. Jesus said, "Remain in me, and you will bear much fruit." The process teaches you the beauty of remaining, of staying planted when others are running, of being rooted instead of restless. One of the clearest signs of spiritual maturity is endurance. Not how loudly you pray, but how long you stay faithful. Not how excited you are in the beginning, but how steady you are when the excitement wears off. Endurance looks like praying when you do not feel goosebumps, worshiping when you have tears in your eyes, still showing up to serve when you feel overlooked, still loving the vision when no one else claps, still trusting God when the promise looks further away than ever. This kind of strength cannot be manufactured. It is only developed in the soil of pressure, time, and surrender. You may not see immediate results, but something deep is being formed. You are becoming the kind of vessel that does not break under warfare. You are learning to carry oil without leaking. You are being trained not just for impact, but for longevity. The assignment is not just about launching, it is about lasting. And to last, you must endure. Now let us take a moment to pray and receive fresh strength for this journey as God's chosen. Father, I come before you with my heart fully open. I do not come as one who has figured everything out, but as one who is learning to trust you more each day. I acknowledge that you are the potter, and I am the clay. Shape me, refine me, remove what is not like you. I do not want to be used by you publicly while remaining broken and rebellious privately. I surrender to the process, even when it stretches me, even when it humbles me, even when it costs me more than I expected. I thank you for choosing me. Even before I was formed, you set me apart. I know the calling is not about preference, but purpose. So I lay down my need to be comfortable, popular, or understood. I choose to walk the narrow road with you. Teach me how to follow when the path is dark. Teach me how to believe when the promises seem far. Teach me how to obey even when I do not understand. I do not want to be a follower in name only. I want my life to be a reflection of your will. Thank you for every hidden season that seemed silent but was full of your activity. Thank you for pruning what I tried to protect, for removing what I thought I needed, for closing doors I begged you to open. You were not rejecting me. You were protecting me. You saw what I could not see. You knew what I was not ready for. And instead of giving me the stage, you gave me the secret place. I now see that as your mercy. Refine my heart, Lord. Strip away pride. Strip away comparison. Strip away the fear that makes me shrink back. Strip away the bitterness I carried from delays and disappointments. I do not want to carry these into the next season. I want to be a vessel you can trust. Not just gifted, but grounded. Not just anointed, but obedient. Not just seen, but submitted. Take away anything that would sabotage what you have called me to carry. Help me to endure, Lord. When it feels long, teach me to be patient. When it feels heavy, strengthen my shoulders. When I am tempted to quit, remind me why you called me. Breathe on me again. Fan into flame what you placed inside me. I want to finish well. I want to stand firm. I want to be faithful, not just in the beginning, but until the end. I know the journey is long, so build endurance in me. Make me steady in storms. Make me rooted when the winds blow. Father, teach me to obey without needing full understanding. Let my obedience not be based on comfort or logic, but rooted in love. If you say move, I will move. If you say wait, I will wait. If you say let go, I will release it. I no longer want to serve you only when it makes sense. I want to serve you because I trust your voice. Even in confusion, I will follow. Even in silence, I will stay faithful. Because I know you are always working, even when I cannot trace you. I surrender my timing, my schedule, my calendar, my impatience. I release it all. I choose to believe that you are never late. I will not compare my timeline to others. I will not measure my progress against what I see online. I will rest in the truth that your timing is not delayed. It is deliberate, and when the time is right, no one will be able to stop what you have prepared. Lord, heal every wound I picked up in the process, the betrayal, the rejection, the loneliness, the misunderstanding. I give it all to you. I forgive those who hurt me. I release the bitterness I held on to. Let nothing in my heart hinder what you want to do through me. Cleanse me, restore me, fill me with peace again. I thank you for every time you kept me hidden, for every moment you protected me from premature exposure, for every room you withheld me from until I was ready. You are not just the God of doors. You are the God of preparation. And I trust that you are preparing me for what is ahead. Let me never forget the secret place. Let me never grow too big to kneel. Let me never become too busy to listen. Let me never trade intimacy for influence. Let me never prioritize platforms over purity. Let me live in a way that honors you privately before it ever shows publicly. I speak over myself today. I am chosen by God. I am not forgotten. I am not behind. I am not overlooked. I am being prepared. I am being refined. I am being strengthened. What He started, He will finish. What He promised, He will fulfill. I may not have seen the full picture, but I trust the painter. And so I say yes again, not just with my words, but with my life. I will keep going. I will keep trusting. I will keep believing. Because you are faithful, and you are worth it all. In Jesus' name, Amen. To everyone still watching, thank you for being part of this faith-filled family. Share this video and let us know how it spoke to you. May God pour out His blessings upon you abundantly.